Hello, hello. We are just waiting for people to come in, but we are so excited to be back in the Palm Health Kitchen. How are you guys? Throw it in the chat. We haven't seen you guys since Thanksgiving. We hope you guys had a great celebration with family and friends. If this is your first class, we couldn't be more excited for you guys to be here. I see a lot of people logging in from all walks of life. Hey guys, hey. Welcome, welcome. Well, again, we're thrilled you're here. Happy Palm Health Cooking Class Day. I love it. That's kind of our new day now. I'm Joel Gamron. If we haven't met, a lot of you guys might know me from homemade classes, but I'm really serving as kind of the resident chef for Palm Health. And if you don't know anything about Palm Health, it's really where, the joys of cooking and culinary really meet clinical care. And we genuinely believe that food is medicine. We believe that so many of what we combat, not just here in America, but in the world, in terms of our health, can be laddered back to what we eat. And if we can really, really figure out how to cook from scratch, be thoughtful about what we put in our bodies, it can change the game. And that is what we represent here at Palm. So again, just you being here says that you care about your health, you care about your future, you care about your habits, and that just makes us so happy. What really separates Palm Health from so many different healthcare provider solutions is not only how we approach it, but the fact of these classes that you can interact with us. So I am one person you can interact with as the chef. Thrilled to be here. You can ask me questions about the recipe, about what we're walking through, but we also have a number of other people on the actual call itself, on this video lesson, that can help us out. So first I want to introduce our amazing buddy. She is just a breath of sunshine. Give it up for Julie. Julie, can you give us a quick bio on yourself?
Hi, Palm friends. I'm Julie Lopez. I'm a registered dietitian, and today I'm going to be your liaison for everything nutrition education related. So this recipe is delicious, and Joel's going to teach you all the cooking tips, and I will be here to help talk about especially anti-inflammatory foods and its benefit towards your health today.
I love it. And we're also matching on the green. I'm very excited about that.
My favorite color.
Awesome. And then, we mentioned clinical care, and we have an incredible doctor straight out of Boston. She is amazing. Give it up for Dr. Hellerstein. Hi, doctor.
Hi, great to be with you today. I'm, as Joel said, coming from Boston. I didn't get the green memo, but cooking. We're always saying half your plate, green and colorful vegetables. But no, I've been in practice for a long time and just found that really what people are looking for is how can I make my life healthier? What can I do? You're telling me all these medical issues, but what the goals are, but how I can get there. And so it's so great to be with you, Joel. You're giving us the how-to, and Julie, the, specifics on the food, and I can help out on like the medical things, like what's motivating the medical things behind it. So it's great to be here with you.
I love it. We got you covered from all angles. Thank you, Dr. Hellerstein. And then, of course, in the chat, we know it's not super comfortable to talk in front of a lot of people, although you can raise your hand and ask me questions out loud, share stories. We love that at Palm. But in the chat, we have co-founder of Palm Health, Misha. Hey, Misha.
Hi, Joel. Really excited to see so many familiar faces today. Send questions to me in the chat. And for this recipe in particular, it's a family favorite, so a lot of things that I can add. I'll want to call one thing out. Today, we're not cooking with chicken, and we're cooking a little bit less rice than usual. So I'm going to send those updates in the chat, but just wanted to let you all know.
I love it. Yeah. So to announce what we are making, and I love that it's a family recipe, and I think that's what's so important is that you can still enjoy your family recipes, your family moments, your heritage, and still eat really, really good. And so we're making this incredible spiced mushroom stew. We're doing it with kind of a crispy Persian rice. All of it is, there's a lot of ingredients in here, and there's a lot of new ingredients, things like barberries, which we couldn't find, but we'll talk about what you look for. Maybe some spices that are unfamiliar. But the reality is that it's a very simple recipe. And I think it's really important to remember that in order to keep it fresh in the kitchen, in order to be eating healthy and not feel bored of it. So you're not just eating steamed foods and, the same bland things. It's important to lean on things like spices. We're going to talk about that today. It's important to tap other ethnicities and other cuisines and look for inspiration so it stays fresh and you don't get bored of what's happening in the kitchen. And that's really important to us at Palm, is that we completely celebrate the diverse plate, because just because you're eating healthy doesn't mean you have to eat boring. That is just the end-all, be-all, mic drop. So let's get started on this. First thing we're going to do is we're going to start this mushroom stew. And I think a lot of people will think, oh, mushroom stew. No, 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 no. This is creamy with yogurt. This is incredibly spiced. It's unbelievably rich and filling, even though it's made with mushrooms. And so it's very, very special in that way. So step one for this mushroom stew is to kind of get a big pot like this. I've got like this is like a saute pan, but it's also got big sides. I like it. It's got lots of square footage here. And we're going to start to kind of chop up some aromatics. And so we've got some celery. We got a little bit of onion, we got ginger and garlic. And you can absolutely chop this by hand. We find that if you can kind of get it really fine, we said like almost sandy texture. We find a food processor works really, really well for this. So you just kind of pop up the lid. And what you do is, whenever you're using a food processor, it's always important to kind of help it out, right? So I'm going to add a little garlic in, but by help it out, I mean, don't just put the whole celery stalk in there. Kind of chop up the celery, right? We've got some onion. We call for a little onion. Yeah?
This would be a totally great Christmas present or Hanukkah present coming up holiday. If you know someone loves cooking, food processor, those mini choppers, add it to the list.
Yeah, those little mini ones that are even smaller than this are so convenient. I love it. All right, so now I'm just peeling the ginger. I've got this is how you measure ginger in anywhere. It's about the size of my thumb. I don't know, it's the only thing we measure against our thumb. But I got a good knob of ginger, so I'm gonna just chop that in there. And then I'm just gonna put on the lid and give this whole thing a little bit of a blitz, all right? It's really, really easy, but you wanna just get it nice and fine. And I'll tell you, I've been a chef for over 20 years. There is no possible way I could chop that fine that fast. No way in heck, no way. All right, so I'll just hold this up so you guys can see this. So very finely chopped. Cool? All right, I'm gonna start with some olive oil in the bottom of my pan. And we're gonna go right in. Yeah.
Can I ask a quick tip on peeling ginger?
Yeah.
Maybe like the spoon method?
Oh, yeah. You want me to talk spoon method?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Absolutely.
I'll show you guys spoon method. So I used a paring knife, but a lot of people are scared of that just because, it's sharp. It's right in your hand. So another cool method is to grab a spoon. This is a different knob of ginger here, and you can just use the spoon to kind of scrape off the skin. Another thing just to call out is you absolutely don't need to peel it. We're peeling it because it's traditional, but you can leave the peel on. It has tons of antioxidants, and it really doesn't change the flavor. So spoon trick, you can use the little paring knife, whatever works for you. But we've got this kind of going, all these aromatics going, and we're kind of stir frying this, right? And we're about to add some spices, and we'll talk about spices. And in Persian cuisine, I kind of want to know two things. One is I want to understand a little bit from the health side of things. So Julie, what spices mean in terms of our health. And then I want to kick it to Misha and ask you about spices in terms of Persian cooking and the importance of that. So let's start with Julie.
So I love using spices in cooking, and they bring in a lot of flavor plus the health benefits.
Totally.
So the biggest thing that I want to hit on is that we're using spices to flavor our foods. We don't have to use excess amounts of sodium. So salt is meant to season and enhance the flavor of our foods that we're working with. It's not meant to make our food taste salty. So utilizing all these beautiful different spices and herbs during the cooking process can really elevate the flavor with also reducing the amount of sodium that we're consuming.
I love that. Yeah, it's interesting. I had a buddy in cooking school he was from India, and obviously used a lot of spices. He carried a little tray of spices with him to cooking school every day. It was so cool. And he got that for getting into cooking school. And he said that spices used to be in India a way to kind of overwhelm the smell of kind of rotten or not so great meat. And so they used tons of spices to kind of do that. As obviously refrigeration and everything progressed and meat was fresh there, they started to use spices exactly like Julie said, less as a way to mask things and more as a way to bring out the flavors of things, almost like instead of salt. So I love that. I'm curious, from an actual Persian herself and someone who has probably had spices since she was out of the womb, Misha, shine a little light on what this means in Persian cooking.
Yeah. So for those of you that know, my family is Persian. We cook with a lot of herbs and spices, as Joel mentioned. And I think a lot of the role of spices for us, it's this kind of this concept of hot and cold foods, balancing what's in your plate. And it goes back to a lot of the themes what we talked about here at Palm. But a lot of times spices are also used in the same way that Julie mentioned. It was to help with things around like anti-inflammatory things. It was to help with enhancing flavor of the foods. It was meant to like serve a lot of that, ancient Buddhist medicine principles. And so feel really lucky that we can carry that into today's class.
It's really cool. And so let's start talking about our spices. We've got some cinnamon, cardamom, turmeric. We've got some chili flakes. By the way, quick question, Dr. Hellerstein or Julie, is spicy food more healthy for you? Is that a weird question? It's random. They're both like, I don't know how to even answer that.
Oh, I was gonna let Dr. Hellerstein.
Well, I don't have a simple answer. I think it depends really on your how you're raised. It's hard for some people to handle spicy food if they didn't get exposed to it early on. So I think you have to start with a small amount and get used to it. And certainly helps preserve food, and there's some things about the spiciness being anti-bacterial elements of that, but if some people just can't tolerate it, so it's not like it's better for them. But
I'm kind of one of those people.
Julie, what do you think?
I was just going to add too, like if you like spice, those spicy flavors are going to add a lot of flavor without, again, not adding a lot of salt.
Yes.
Or also, too, you can think about like those factors for health benefits. Like peppers have some really great health benefits, and coming from that pepper, if you do a smoked paprika or a red cayenne pepper, every food is going to contribute to some sort of antioxidant or health benefits in that aspect.
I love it. I love it. Well, as you guys can see in my pan, the whole color has changed, and I can tell you the whole smell in my kitchen has changed. When you toast spices, they bloom, they open up, right? And that's what we're doing. We're toasting them in that celery, in that garlic, in that onion, in that ginger. And this is what I'm talking about, is now it smells and things that you're not used to, and it makes it so exciting to eat really, really good for your body. And that's why exploring other cuisines, new spices is so important to a healthy lifestyle. So now we're going to talk mushrooms. We've got some baby portobellos. We've got some shiitakes. Any mushrooms will work. We called for a ton of mushrooms. We're not going to cook all these, but we're going to go in with a couple good handfuls here. And we're going to turn the heat all the way up, all right? And at this point, it's almost like a wok. We're stir-frying the mushrooms in the spices. Look how they start to kind of get that yellow tie-dye color from the turmeric. How cool is that? I love that. So you're almost like just crisping and caramelizing these mushrooms. And the goal is to really cook them. Oh, the spices are now hitting my throat. That's how it goes, baby. I love it. But the goal is to kind of cook these until they start to kind of lose their water a little bit. You don't need to get them like unbelievably brown. And you'll also notice that they're going to really soak up your olive oil. So if you need a little bit more olive oil, just to kind of make sure they're still kind of going, you can always add just a little bit. Just be mindful of how much you're adding. But as these mushrooms start to cook down, mushrooms, I'm going to throw that back to the health team here. Something we should be eating more of, something that we should be mindful of eating. Thoughts?
I love mushrooms. They are one of my favorite foods.
Yes.
But anyway, besides the point, mushrooms have really great health benefits. So they support your immune health. They are one of the only foods that can naturally contribute to vitamin D consumption because the way they are grown. Oftentimes they're now using like ultraviolet light to grow in that dark kind of damp spot for these mushrooms.
Yep.
So they have that vitamin D, and with vitamin D it helps with calcium absorption. So we need to pair those together to get that benefit. Last thing is also too is that your mushrooms have that really meaty kind of consistency. So this is a fully vegetarian meal. You're still going to get that hardiness from the texture, and especially now that Joel's using all different varieties of mushrooms. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is there specific mushrooms that are better than others? Sorry to cut you off, Dr. Hallerstein.
You want to add to that?
I was just going to add in that, there are some really good studies that show that mushrooms actually like decrease your risk of cancer. Just like an eighth of a cup a day, 2 medium mushrooms. And, some of the ones like shiitake, oyster, king oysters have higher amounts of some of the chemicals that can help with that cancer prevention. So that's great. And again, there's some evidence that it helps lower cholesterol. So, beyond being delicious and a substitute for meat, like here we're putting it in instead of chicken, so based proteins instead of animal proteins. But beyond that, can you imagine, decreasing your cancer risk, helping lower your cholesterol? That's amazing.
I love that. I didn't realize that. That's really, really interesting. And I did have a question. I'm going to circle back to it. But is there mushrooms that are more healthy than others, or they're all kind of equal playing field?
I would say more equal playing field. It's
Okay.
the same thing with like different varieties of apples. They're all apples. They're all
Yeah.
contributing to about the same nutrients and health benefits, but then you get a little more of this here, a little more of that there, depending on what variety.
I love that. I love that. Okay, awesome. Well, next up on the stew, you guys can see the mushrooms. It kind of started up here really high. Now they're getting dark and brown and sticky and losing all the water and cooking down. We're going to add a couple of tomatoes to this. So I've just got everyday tomatoes. Doesn't have to be crazy. And if all you have is, some canned tomatoes, that will work too. But the way that I like to cut some tomatoes is, do you see the little top here? I just take my knife and I just kind of make a V. And I just carve out that little top, just like that. Cool, really easy. And then you just want to chop this tomato up. So I just cut it into little slabs like this, and this is all gonna cook down almost to nothing. So it's okay if they're not perfectly chopped up, but you want to chop them up, semi-fine so they kind of break down in the pan. The tomato is gonna add some really beautiful color to this. It's also going to add some acid to make this really interesting in the mouth. And we talk a lot about acid here, especially for people who don't or kind of avoid eating a ton of salt. Acid is a great way, a squeeze of lemon, a little glug of apple cider vinegar, a little bit of tomato. It makes food pop, right? It doesn't make food taste different. It makes food pop and taste more like itself. So these mushrooms will become more mushroomy because of this. So we're going to start with our tomatoes, kind of get those in there. And you can see we're just kind of stir frying it with all those mushrooms. This looks so yummy. And I don't even know how to tell you the smell. And this next phase is going to blow your mind because it kind of blew my mind. And I want Misha to tell us a little bit about the Persian tradition here in a second. But I also want to dive deep into yogurt. So yogurt in Persian cooking is huge. For marinades, for thickeners, for stews like this. And typically we use things like cream, really, really heavy, fatty things that go into our stews and sauces. So I love that in Persian cuisine, they lean on something like yogurt, which can be really, really beneficial to your health. So we're going to make this kind of thickened yogurt. And I'm going to take about a cup of yogurt. I'm going to put it in the same food processor that we just chopped up all the vegetables in. All right? I also have a good handful of just raw almonds. All right, these are going into the yogurt. a good handful of raisins, unsweetened raisins going in, and then a couple of good squeezes of lime. All right, now the lime is going to kind of help stabilize the yogurt, meaning it won't break and it will stay kind of creamy in our stew. But I want to start by just talking about yogurt in general, because I've been told, I mean, I think we all know on the call that yogurt is good for you, right? Dr. Hellerstein and Julie, like, is yogurt good for you? Do you have to be eating non-fat yogurt? Like, I don't really know. And I also know, man, you go to the grocery store and you go to the yogurt section, look on the back of about 90% of them, and there is sugar to the wazoo. So what do we look for? What do we not look for? And your thoughts on yogurt in general?
Well, I'll speak up a little bit and then Julie can take over. So yogurt, it's a great probiotic. And we talk about, what makes yogurt from milk. It's all those healthy bacteria that's in the yogurt that helps your immune system, that helps your gut, your microbiome. So it's amazing. And then there's a lot of people who can't tolerate lactose so much. They drink milk and they get stomach aches, they get gassy, but yogurt is partially broken down, and so they can tolerate that as a milk product. You get your calcium. Again, as Joel says, look at that package, because get the plain and sweeten it yourself if you need that little sweet bit, because the amount of yogurt out there, especially kids' yogurts, even adults' yogurts that have tons and tons of sugar in it is crazy. So I always suggest get plain, and if you're going to add a little sweetener, you do it yourself. Add fruit, add flavors like you are. Fruit, savory, sweet, it goes both directions.
I love that.
I'm going to piggyback on that. I think it's really important to add some yogurt into your daily diet, those probiotics, but you also need to think about the prebiotics, and the prebiotics come from the plants. Those plants, that fiber is going to feed the probiotics to flourish in your gut. And so that's really important for your gut health.
Yeah,
and then also too, you want to think about like the percent of fat of yogurt. You have your non-fat, you have your low fat, you have your full fat. Everyone's going to be choosing different ones based on what their health goals are. And I just like to note that a little bit of fat is okay, because we have fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. So we want to have fat contributing to part of our meal, but we have some olive oil in here. We have those heart healthy nuts going in here. So you can use a non-fat yogurt if you want to in this recipe.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's amazing to me how fantastic. Yogurt is, from a culinary perspective, one of the great cheats. And I say cheat has a bad connotation, but like, you can sub yogurt in so many places that you would never, ever imagine, right? I mean, let's start with dessert. Anytime something calls for whipped cream, a dollop of yogurt. And honestly, it gives you more twang, it gives you more body, and you don't need the sweetness and the pure fat from the cream itself. But things like breads and cakes and sauces and marinades, like I was saying, salad dressings. I mean, you think about a Caesar salad dressing, it is just pure fat, right? And you can just grind a little anchovy, garlic, and mustard into some yogurt, and you have a really creamy yogurt Caesar salad dressing, which is unbelievably good fat, and it's really, really great for the body and digestion, like we were just talking about. So thank you both. Misha, can you talk a little bit about yogurt in terms of just like culinary tradition of Persian cooking?
Yeah, it actually goes back to this idea of like hot and cold food, which I know I didn't describe super well, but yogurt's one of those things that we always add to the table. Either we add it to a dish or we have it on the table as something to cut with like a fattier meat, or to like add alongside a rice and a herb and a meat. And so it is one of those things where I think I would call yogurt like the Persian condiment. It sits next to every single meal, and people eat it as a way to help like balance other things like pairing yogurt with rice helps balance blood sugar, things like that. So little tips like that.
I love
Could it
it.
also like mellow out some of the heat? Because it has like, if you have some of the creaminess, the fat coming from the yogurt can really balance out that heat a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, well, while we were chatting, we were grinding away. So almonds, raisins, yogurt, and now I'll hold this up because I really want you guys to see. It almost looks like tahini, if you guys know, which is kind of a ground sesame paste, or like peanut butter. It's got this really kind of creamy, thick texture, and I'm literally just going to hold the blade back and pour this in. And this is new for me. Like, I think what's really cool about this, I mean, guys, I've been cooking professionally for a long time. I've never thickened a yogurt, a stew like this. But look at this. Look as I stir that in. It just gets gorgeously creamy. The lime, everything in there. And it's just completely changed now. And you have this stunning, gorgeous stew. Look at this. Look at that. It just transforms like magic. It's just coating the back of the spoon. It smells so good. I can't even describe. Like cardamom, like even the almonds are getting toasty. The mushrooms, it's just the depth of this dish is unbelievable. And for those of you who are skeptical, first of all, I'm glad you came and you're open-minded to this, but this is a must try. I haven't even tasted it yet, and I can already tell you it's going to be amazing. This is a good time to season, but I will say from a culinary perspective, and probably also from a health perspective, but I don't want to speak for Dr. Hellerstein and Julie, we always season kind of at the end. You can do a little bit of salt, but when it comes to stews, stocks, things that are going to kind of reduce over time, you want to salt at the end, because if you salt at the beginning, the salt's just going to get more and more concentrated and salty. So adjusting at the end is perfect. It's fine to add a little bit, but I know this is going to need just a touch on the finish. But at this point, we turned our heat down to low once the yogurt mixture with the almonds and the lime is in, and we're just letting that kind of cook away. And you can see it's just getting creamy and stewy and all the right things. So any questions on that, please bring them forward. How are we doing in the chat, Misha?
Hey Joel, I just
Yeah.
wanted to highlight also too what I learned from this recipe.
Yes.
This is also a new technique from me, or for me, was learning that if you add that acid to the yogurt before you add it to the hot stew, it will help stabilize it and won't curdle your yogurt. I was thinking we were gonna have to temper it, but look, it's perfectly creamy. It did not break at all.
I know. It's crazy. You think these little things like adding lime to yogurt is just there for flavor. No, no, no. It's there to keep it together and not broken. I love that. Thank you, Julie. Okay. Well, it sounds like we don't have a lot of questions on that. I am so excited to just faceplant into that. Seriously, no joke. Of course, I'll wait for it to cool down before I do that. But the next recipe we're going to do is a Persian rice. And a lot of you, I have some Persian cousins. And by the way, if you've ever been to a Persian wedding or a celebration, you never really can go to any other wedding or celebration because they're so fun. Everyone is screaming, having a blast, singing. The food is flowing out. It's just a different level of celebration and happiness, in my opinion. And I've always had tahdig at these celebrations. And for those of you guys who don't know, tahdig, and I honestly, Misha should be talking about this more than I am, but well, let's do that. Misha, why don't you describe what tahdig is?
Yes, I'm going to unmute myself. So tahdig is the Persian word for bottom of the pot. And basically what it is we somewhat like burn rice a little bit. And not burn so that it's burnt to a crisp, but the technique allows it so that the bottom of a pot when you're making rice leads to this like really crunchy, savory rice, kind of a little bit of fat in there, rice moment that makes it so that you have this really satisfying crunch when you crunch into it. It's almost like if someone in this chat said that if yogurt is like Persian ketchup, I would say that tahdig is like a Persian crouton. It's like so good, it's crisped up, and it really, really adds this. Like we always fight over it at the end of every on every table. So this is a little bit of like getting that crisp technique, but also allowing for a lot of that fluffy rice as well.
It is the best of both worlds, and from someone like me, I've been struggling with my weight now for about, I don't know, ever since I've been cooking, really. So a long time. I'm going to say 20 plus years. And I've always been told to monitor rice and not to overeat rice. I also hear a lot about brown rice. I'm curious for perspective, either Dr. Hellerstein or Julie, but like rice in general, is it something we should be avoiding? It's okay to work in? Like, I'm curious.
Well, I think it goes back to that healthy plate, and it's all a matter of portion. So
Yeah.
Misha made this recipe with a little bit less rice than you might be used to using, and that's going to help sort of guide you. Like rice is like one quarter of your plate, but when it comes to types of rice, brown rice does have like 6 times more fiber than white rice, but then there's certain recipes that just call for one kind of rice or another. So I think you can't like deprive yourself. It shouldn't be your go-to like half your plate every day you meet to have white rice. But when you're making something special like this crunchy Persian rice, I mean, you got to go with what works sometimes and not just always think of only healthy things. But brown rice in general is a good thing to go for.
Love it. Love it. Thank you. Well, to start off this crispy Persian rice, we're using basmati rice. So go to the store, look specifically for basmati rice. And I washed this a couple of times already, but I wanted to leave it a little bit unwashed so you guys could see. I'm going to hold this up to the side camera here, Luke, and you can see how foggy this water is. You guys can see it's very cloudy, very murky. So this is about my third or fourth wash, and I just took some rice, put it in a bowl, covered it with warm water, and kind of swish it around with my hands, and then I take it and I pour out the water. And I kind of do that again. I know I'm over here at the sink, but I'll just show you. I just fill it up again. You don't have to measure the water. I kind of massage the rice like this to kind of get more of that starch off, and then I pour off any excess water. And we do this with sushi rice. We do this with a lot of different grains and rices, just to kind of get the initial layer of starch off. So as it cooks, it doesn't all stick together in one clump, and it stays like individual little grains, which is so important. So we gave this about 4, maybe 5 washes before the water starts to run kind of clear. And what we do at this point is really simple. We just add the rice with a little bit of stock and water. So I'll start with stock. You can use chicken stock, vegetable stock, and we're going to add the rice right in. Now the ratio is a little bit wonky on the recipe. Well, you want to make sure that you guys have the right ratio. It's 1 part rice to 4 parts liquid, and that could be 4 parts stock, that could be 4 parts water, but it just needs to be liquid of some sort. And what we're going to do at this point is give it a quick stir, and you can see how clear it is compared to what it was. And it's a little tough to see how clear it was because now we add chicken stock to it. But what we do at this point is we bring it to a boil. So this is really, really similar to how we usually cook rice. This is how we cook rice. We bring it to the boil, and then typically we turn it all the way down on low, and we let it go for about 20 minutes. Well, this is different. This we're going to bring to the boil, and as it starts to boil, and this will come to a boil in just a second here, we start to add some amazing, amazing aromatics to this. Things that I absolutely love. 3 ingredients that are some of our favorites here at Palm Health. So one of which we haven't taken off the menu since our very first class. And I forgot to mention at the very top, and we always talk about this, but this is part of a kind of a 6-part series. So this class, we have another class coming up next week, actually our last one coming up the week after. So you are catching us at our 4th class, which is really exciting. I think in all 4 classes, we've had turmeric in every single class. So we love turmeric here at Palm Health. So we start by adding a little bit of turmeric over the top of this. And then we're going to also add some aromatics. So I've got a little bit of that ginger, the one that I peeled with the spoon. You don't need to peel it for this, but I grab a microplane and I just start grating some ginger over the top of this. And you can see it's starting to boil just a little bit. And the goal is we want to boil all the water away. So we want to cook this until all the water is away. And that is very different than normal rice. Normal rice, you want to bring it to the boil, put on a lid, and turn it down to simmer. This is, you want to boil it till there is no more liquid, and then we'll talk about the lid. And now I'm going to grate in some garlic. So I've got our rice, turmeric, a little bit of water and stock, ginger, and garlic. And we're just bringing this to the boil. And as this boils, the garlic, the turmeric, the ginger, everything is going to kind of infuse into that rice. Look at it change color too. It's this golden, gorgeous color. Look at that. Is that not stunning? Misha, is that just home for you right there?
Yeah, and I would maybe share a little story here. I think
Yeah.
this is not a typical way of making Persian rice. In that all these aromatics, this recipe here came, I think I mentioned in the beginning, it's a family recipe, because we had a lot of anti-inflammatory, we had a lot of inflammation in my family. It was actually a moment in which my mom wanted to take something that we cooked normally, which was white rice, and make it a little bit of a vehicle for some of the benefits of turmeric and ginger and garlic. And so all the way that the rice is absorbing that is, I think, it came from this desire of taking something that we loved and trying to put more health factors in it, which I think is very similar to what we're doing here at Palm. So
Yeah.
wanted to share that story for everyone.
I love it. I love it. And I think Misha and I share a lot of some medical history, and we have a lot of inflammation. And I don't know, I've shared this last time, but I have colitis, which is a form of IBD. So I'm constantly looking to kind of lower inflammation. And that's kind of what we wanted to talk about. So as this rice comes to the boil and starts to kind of lose some of its liquid, I would love to hear just a little bit of a back and forth, if it's cool, from Julie, Dr. Hellerstein, about what is inflammation. And we hear about chronic inflammation. I'm wondering if you guys can kind of deep dive into that.
Yeah, so I'll kick it off and really talk about what inflammation is. So inflammation, you hear it all the time, but you need to get a better understanding of what's really happening in your body. So inflammation is the part of the body's defense mechanism. So it plays an important role in the healing process. And you have two types of inflammation. You have acute and chronic. So when you have acute inflammation, you're thinking like you just got a cut, maybe you have swelling, you twisted your ankle. You can see that, it's visual, and you feel it right away. Whereas chronic is something that has been fueling for a long time. So diabetes, cardiovascular disease. And a way I like to really think about it, to put it in perspective, is think about acute inflammation as like a campfire. It burns hot and bright. It's only there for a short period of time, and it's going to dwindle down. It does provide a purpose. It's keeping you warm, the campfire, but then it would be protective if it's like a cut. It's healing. Your chronic inflammation is like the hot coals that remain after you put the fire out. They're still smoldering at that lower temperature, but they're not as noticeable. So this is where that risk lies. It's still really hot, and it has potential to lead to bigger problems or serious issues that aren't addressed, something like diabetes or high cholesterol. So that's really the difference between that acute versus chronic.
I'll never forget that
and,
visual. That's
you know,
a
I
good
think
one.
that an example, I think everyone's heard of, who are those people who, gluten sensitivity or actually gluten allergy, and that in people it's like an allergic reaction that causes inflammation in your gut and leads to a lot of long-term problems, including cancer and malabsorption and a lot of generalized symptoms. But I think we don't think of some of the other things that might be causing chronic inflammation. You can have chronic stress in your life. You can eat a lot of like processed foods, lots of added sugar, sleep disturbances, being overweight. There's a lot of things that really can add to that chronic inflammation, and you might not even notice the chronic inflammation until you have one of the outcomes that is the result of that chronic inflammation. So that's the key. Is this, you have acute inflammation. Ouch! It hurts. It's red. It's swollen.
You can see it.
You're right. But this chronic thing is just, your diet can really influence. So those are the downside. Julie, do you want to talk about some of the things you can eat to decrease some of the antioxidants, anti-inflammatory foods?
Yeah, so I find that if you want to start small, we can definitely dive deeper in another session. But the key elements that I like to really point out is your omega-3 fatty acids. So that's found in your fish, your seafood, nuts, seeds, avocados. They contain these fats that help slow the inflammatory pathways, and they combat the inflammation in your body.
Interesting.
Next up is antioxidants. And antioxidants doesn't contribute to any calories in our diet, but they provide essential benefits to our bodies. And did you know, fun fact, there are over 8,000 identified dietary antioxidants. So all the different colors are contributing to different antioxidants. So that's why we talk about eating the rainbow, different colors, different pigments of colors are going to give you those different antioxidants. So what they're doing though in your body is they combat the damage from free radicals. And that contributes to the overall inflammation in your body. These free radicals that are replicating and multiplying and causing harm to your body. They're kind of putting them at bay, fighting them off, and they're going to support your overall health to reduce the inflammation. And last one I have is fiber. So we talk about our plants in Palm Health classes. How do we add more plants? Half our plate being focused really on those plants. And that's going to contribute to our fiber consumption is those plants. As humans, as animals, we have bones as our structure. Plants have fiber as their structure. So fiber is going to contribute to keep you fuller longer, but it's also going to help with mechanisms. So for instance, cholesterol, it clings on to excess cholesterol in your body and helps it move through your system versus clinging on and keeping that recycling in your body. So we want fiber in all of our meals, and really how to enhance that for gut health as well. So I know I rambled a ton of stuff. So what questions do you have for me and Dr. Hellerstein?
First of all, that was super, super interesting. I know inflammation and is a major topic. But yeah, Misha, anything come through the chat for these two very qualified individuals who just walked us through it?
No questions in the chat so far, but I think if there's one thing I'll say is I think one thing that I learned from this is that there's this whole range of inflammation, right? Where for some folks, you may experience it in an acute way, and there's these quick, almost in some ways, it almost feels like food really is being used as medicine. It's like a quick fix around investing in what you're eating and helping that kind of calm things down. But then on the other end, it says, for folks that may have been diagnosed, there's also still food can still play a role in helping modify that. We do have actually one question that just came in, which I will ask, which is around how to think about the effects of eating anti-inflammatory foods. Is it a every meal type of thing, once a day type of thing, couple times a week?
So it kind of goes back to that balanced plate. If we're looking at that, we're doing that anti-inflammatory kind of focus. Half our plate is going to be those non-starchy vegetables, the fruits. A quarter of it can be focused on grains, focusing more on those whole grains if we can. Choosing those leaner proteins. It could be animal sources, lean, or choosing our plant-based sources of protein. So overall, it's not going to be, okay, I just had this one great day of anti-inflammatory eating. I am the picture of health. It doesn't really work that way, unfortunately. We got to have that consistency. And if you think about your consistency in your other eating habits, it's going to slowly take time. But that's what we're focusing on every day, is to eat that balanced plate.
And it would be so cool to have one great day of eating like this and just change the whole thing. Great question. Guys, I'm going to bounce back to the rice here because at this point, the liquid is gone. One thing I want to make sure I mention is, for this particular rice, you can absolutely make it in any pot, but it's best to make it in a non-stick pot. If you have one with a non-stick surface, you can make it in any pot. It might stick a little bit. You just have to kind of scrape the bottom with a wood spoon. But I want you guys to see this rice at this point has no more liquid in it, right? It's just totally dry. And you can take ghee, which is clarified butter, or some olive oil, and you just kind of sprinkle that over the top. And this is where it just gets so interesting. At this point, you take the lid and you wrap it. And what I like to do is actually just take the whole pot and just kind of put a little bit of, a towel or a little napkin over the top of it, lid on top of that, and then wrap the lid like this. And we turn down the heat to low for anywhere between 45 minutes to 2 hours. And what's left after this happens, I'm going to move this to the side, is hopefully you have kind of a drying out of the bottom of the rice and a really fluffy middle of the rice. So we'll see how
Joel,
good I did. Yes.
I will add one maybe like tip here. So one of the reasons why we wrap the lid with a towel
Yeah.
is it absorbs the steam. And when it absorbs the steam of the rice, because like the rice is in there, there's still liquid in there, absorbs it all up, and that's actually what lets the bottom crisp. So it's a little bit of this is one of the kind of chemistry-ish moments that I thought I'd share.
I love it. I love it. It's not the first time I've actually seen this towel trick, and it is a good one. It's a very good one. So we'll see how I did. This one is totally cooked, and I'll just kind of take off the lid, and it's been just kind of cooking away for an hour, hour and a half now. Hopefully getting crispy on the bottom. We'll see. I don't know. But the best way to kind of pop this out is to grab a plate that is the same, obviously, diameter of your pot. Lay that right on top. Grab your pot and kind of turn it upside down. Let's see. I don't know. Did we get crispy? We got pretty crispy. Look at that. We got pretty crispy. Hold on. I'm missing a whole crispy bit. So one got stuck in the bottom of the pan. I just want you guys to see this. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of pick this bit up. And this is where you can kind of scrape it. And I'll hold this up and you can just see right next to it is just all, it's kind of what Misha was talking about. It's like a crouton almost. It's like really gorgeous golden brown. And if it doesn't come out in one big loaf like this side, that's okay, right? It's going to be rice anyways. We're going to break it up. But the goal is to kind of have that crispy bottom, which we actually achieved, which is pretty cool. So very fun to see. All right, so just to recap, we have got our crispy Persian rice. Oh my God, I got to try a little bit. I'm sorry. Yeah. There's rice, and then there's this crispy Persian rice. This is off the hook. So good. So we have that. We've got our stew stewing. And I've just been stirring that every once in a while. We're now going to just kind of make this bright, almost, we call it a garnish, right? A little topping on top of the stew. It's nice to have something fresh on top of a hot stew because it brightens it and it just kind of wakens it up. And so we've got a couple of things here. First is I got a cucumber. And with this, I'm just going to slice it on the bias. So what I mean by that is I'm not slicing it at a 90-degree angle. I'm slicing it kind of at a 45-degree angle. And just really thin, beautiful shavings of cucumber. The thinnest you can get. Right? And this is just going to be so nice. It's a nice, fresh crunch on top of the stew. You would never think, fresh cucumber on top of a stew. It works. It totally works. So we've got some nice cucumber. We've got some fresh herbs. So I've got some dill that I'm just going to pick off the stem and just kind of tear up, put in a little pile over there. And I'm going to do the same thing with basil. And this, obviously, we've done before, right? Adding fresh herbs at the end of a really beautiful stew or sauce is just makes so much sense. I'm just going to cut the basil up really small like this so it kind of confettis. This is called a chiffonade. So we've got kind of this pile of basil. We have this pile of dill. We have this pile of cucumbers. And then if you want to, you can just kind of mix them all into like a little salad, almost like a little herby cucumber salad. And this is just this perfect little topping. It's actually a great little side salad too. And it's missing one piece, which just to kind of echo what's in the yogurt. If you guys remember, we added raisins into the yogurt. We've got a couple of raisins that we're going to add just to the topping of this. You know, in Persian cooking, it's really nice to kind of have those sweet dried fruits. And one of the things about dried fruits that I learned over the years is, you know, you hear the word fruit and you're like, oh, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, right? And dried fruit tends to be a little bit more confusing because dried fruit, although it is apricots, it is apples, it is cherries, it is cranberries, it's all the great fruits, a lot of the times, you know, when they're dried, they're not so good for you in the sense of, I mean, they're still good for you, but they have to be moderated. They have to be thoughtful. So I would love to dive deep into the dried fruit conundrum. What should we be thinking about when we think about eating dried fruit just plain out of the box or out of the bag, and then also using it in our cooking?
So you definitely want to think about portion size. So essentially for raisins, like a cup of grapes is a serving for fruit. But that same cup of grapes, you dehydrate them into raisins, that's only a third of a cup.
Right.
So much smaller portion size that we have to be mindful of. And it's so easy to just pop in a third of your cup as a handful in or add it to your dish. So you just need to be mindful about portion size. And then when things come into a package, you just have to look at your label. Make sure they're not adding sugar to it. I know a lot of dried fruits, they tend to add some sugar just to make that sweetness factor a little bit higher, but
Yep.
it really should just be that fruit itself, and that is it.
Dr. Hellerstein, anything to add there?
No, I just agree with you. I agree with Julie that you just, again, we don't want you to deprive yourself of anything, but here you're just sprinkling on,
Yeah.
to get the flavor on top, and you really taste it. It's delicious, but yeah, it's concentrated. It's a concentrated sugar, so
Yeah.
tastes delicious, but little packets is good.
Yeah.
And this is being incorporated into the meal, so you have that balance on your plate already. You're not just like taking palmfuls of raisins and eating them at one time.
I'm not above it. Trust me, I've been there
I know.
before. I've sat and watched a great movie eating just raisins, believe it or not. This is the part at every Palm Health class that we do where we kind of just take a moment. And I think that when you're done cooking and you have a beautiful meal like this crispy rice and this stunning stew and this beautiful topping, you just want to dive in and grab a bowl and a plate and go after it. But we ask you guys at home here at Palm Health to just take a minute and we think about our plate. And we heard a lot about words like balance and Dr. Hellerstein, do you mind? I know a lot of people have been in our classes before here at Palm Health, but what is our philosophy on the plate and how we kind of approach that?
So we're just trying to revamp how we look at a healthy plate and what looks good. And we want about half of our plate to be fruits or vegetables, and a quarter of that plate to be a lean protein. Here we've got the yogurt, the mushrooms, that are parts of our protein. And we've got 1/4 of our plate is going to be that rice.
Yep.
So we want some healthy fats in there. We're talking about plant-based fats rather than animal fats. And water is always a good thing to drink alongside of this.
Yep.
Flavor your water with fruits, vegetables, herbs. It's great to stick some of those herbs in your water too.
Oh, heck yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go after it. So hopefully you guys can all see this plate right here. But I'm going to start with like about a 1/4 cup of kind of this broken up crispy rice as the base, right? And then I'm going to grab a little bit of this stew. Oh my gosh, this smells unbelievable. And just kind of top it with the stew, right? And the stew is kind of the part where I want to go double on. That's the center of the plate here, right? And then, which is really nice, is we kind of take, if you can find a little crispy bit like this, just a little bit more, and you kind of treat it almost like a crouton. You can kind of tuck in that little crispy bit of rice right in there. And then you can take this little herby, raisin and cucumber salad and just kind of right over the top, just kind of build it nice and high. And, we always talk about from a culinary standpoint, this looks to me like you could sell this for $45 at a nice restaurant because we stacked it up nice and high. Luke, can we go to a side view here? Like, it's stunning. Beautiful stew piled high with fresh herbs. Really
And you don't always have to have the salad on the side. We have a salad right on top.
How about that? I love that. I was joking with these guys as we kind of talked throughout the week and we talk about these classes. But we were talking about the salad on top thing, and it's like, have you guys ever had a pizza where you have the pizza and then right on top of the pizza you put like a fresh salad and you eat salad with the pizza? I mean, that's great, right? That's a balanced bite. And it's okay to have less pizza and have a couple of slices, but piled high with a kale salad or a beautiful romaine chopped salad. That's awesome, and it gives you such cool texture vibes with the hot and the cold. So let's dive into this. I got to try it. I'm like dying. I mean, it's so crispy. This is so different. Wow. My knees buckled a little bit there. You guys, hard to describe because there's so much going on. Immediately, it's crunchy. You get the crunch from the rice. It's really, really texturally satisfying. Like it just works. The rice soaks in the stew. The stew is so light. That is the first thing that came to mind. It's like, it's not a stew where you're like, oh man, this is heavy. It's sticking to the back of my mouth. It's a very bright and light stew. And I think it's because of the base of it, it's yogurt, which is crazy. And also, I can't tell you how meaty this tastes. Like you would think there's not even chicken, steak in here. Then I think it's just the mushrooms develop so much flavor. They take so much on. The spices are balanced. They're not overwhelming. It's not spicy at all. Like people think spice is spicy. This is just a dance. I'm literally salivating as you can't not. And then at the very finish, you get this bright, beautiful crunch of the cucumbers and the fresh herbs and those gorgeous, gorgeous raisins. It's just like, I'm 100% making this over and over and over again. And this is one of those things as well that I feel like you can absolutely make a big batch of. You can't necessarily freeze it because the yogurt's in there, but you can put it in the fridge, rewarm it gently, and it will hold really, really nice. So beautiful dish.
One thing I'll share, Joel, is that I find that a lot of, and this is maybe going back to a lot of like maybe a tip of Persian cooking, when we cook with so many spices, what we have found is that the next day the stew tastes just as good, if not better, because it's given it time for all the spices to melt. So this is one of the things that I actually made this one on Monday, and even today we were still like warming up leftovers and making it, and it held really well.
It's beyond balanced. It is so good. Speaking of good, I just feel so good being here with you guys. I hope you guys had as much fun in this past hour as we did. I want to reiterate, this is Palm Health, and this is kind of a pilot of classes. This is a 6-part series where we really, really care about hearing from you guys. We're a newer company, a newer group of individuals, and we just have this hypothesis that we know if you can really eat great, you can prevent a lot of the problems down the road that could affect your health. And what we want to know is how can we make this program better? So one of the things that you'll be getting from us is a survey. We would love if you were able to take the time. It takes 3-5 minutes to fill out, but as much information as you can pack in there on what you would do to improve this, what you liked about it, what worked for you would be so helpful for us. Also helpful for us is to see you next week. Misha, what are we cooking next week?
So I'm really excited about next week. Next week is all about desserts. So we're gonna remix some of the favorites. We're thinking a brownie. We're thinking something gingerbread. We might even do a favorite candy bar. And we're gonna lean into talking a lot about sugar, how to think about it, how to think about sweeteners, how to think about glucose spikes, how to think about using whole foods when you're making desserts. Like, can you actually use avocado for dessert?
Yes.
Does that ever work? Does it taste good? So we're going to do a lot of desserts next week, and I think just in time for the holidays.
Absolutely. That's going to be great. So first part, fill out the survey. Second part, join us for a really, really health-forward dessert next week. Last part, probably the most important part, spread the word. We would love your friends, your family, whoever you know that could really benefit from a Palm Health class to come join us. These are totally free. They're for you guys. They're for your benefit. So please let everyone know that we're here. We so thank everyone here for your time, and cannot wait to jump back into the kitchen with you guys next week. So again, we'll be back here 4 o'clock Eastern. That's 1 o'clock Pacific on Wednesdays. That's where you catch us. And thank you so much. We'll catch you next time. See you, everybody.